Hello, world. Welcome to another episode of the Deep Dive with Eyal Shai. My guest today is Lukas Rosenstock. Hi, Lukas.
Hello, good to be here.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to have you here. I'm really interested to learn from you what is an idea that has been helping you live well.
So, one of the things that I have been thinking about is identity. And by identity, I mean who am I and what are the things that define who I am? And especially, like, how many things are there that define my identity? And at the same time, what are the people that have an influence on identity? And like, what are the people that define who I am or who you are. And for me, the idea that, or like the approach that I would take towards my identity is what I call as control and diversify your identity. And by that, I mean that be in control of your own identity. That means you have the agency on who you are, and don't let anyone else define that, or don't give anyone else too much influence over that. And the second aspect is diversify, and that means don't try to make a single thing, anything in your life, your whole identity.
Yeah, that's those are questions that are definitely important to me, and we'll get to that, I guess, during the interview. Yeah, so if we started with the control aspect, I'd like to hear a little bit about the origin story of this idea in your life. Presumably, it's there to solve for something, or has helped you make a leap at some point. What's the story there?
Yeah. So I would prefer not to start with my own life. I would like to give an example that I've read recently about the dangers of not being in control. And
Mm,
that's the that's an idea that's known as audience capture, and it's something that a lot of people who are in the public, like influencers or even politicians and journalists, suffer from. And that is this idea that you start out with something, and then you get feedback from the people who listen to you, and then you whatever you do starts getting shaped by whatever feedback you get. And at the end, you basically become what your audience wants you to be. And good example that I've recently read about, there was this YouTuber, I think he's called like Nico Cado or something, and he started out as a vegan, and he was also doing music videos. And then at some point he said, "Oh, I don't want to be a vegan anymore." And then he started doing these mukbang videos where you like record yourself while eating, and then that kind of resonated with the audience. And because these videos were so popular with his audience, he he started making more extreme versions of these videos. Like he would be eating more stuff and a lot of unhealthy stuff and like huge amounts of this, and the audience would cheer on him, and um, he would become like a totally different person than this like health conscious vegan that he started out. Now he's the guy who's popular for like eating 5 McDonald's meals at once or whatever. And just I wanted to start with this because I find this is like a um, really good example about like the dangers of it. As per my own life, I wouldn't say like I'm a person with like a huge audience or anything, but I would say like this whole idea of being in control. I think that's something um, that has been with me my whole life. And I think even like when I was a child or when I was a teenager, I really tried doing like my own thing, and I was kind of afraid of being like part of like large groups or something, because I was somehow afraid that someone else would like try and control who I am, or make me do things that I didn't want to do. And yeah, I think this whole idea of being in control and having like the agency to like decide what I do and what I don't do and how people see me. I think this is something that has somehow always been with me.
Yeah, I can share an interesting experience that I had that relates to this. So, um, right after my mandatory army service here, I flew within the week, I think, to Georgia, to the middle of the forest, the Georgia, the U.S. state, and stayed there. And for 2 months, I think, I didn't even call back home. I just wanted to do my thing, disappear there, kind of do my into the wild phase, and I did make plans with my childhood friends, three of them, so that they would come pick me up. We would buy a car and start a road trip around the states, right? So I was just out there on the farm, and there were other people from the states, and I just got to reinvent myself and be who I wanted because nobody knew me, and not consciously. I was just being who I was there, right? So after 4 months or so, reunited with my friends from back home, and it's just a most bizarre experience when you realize they are, to them I'm just a Al that they knew all their life, but actually in 4 months away from the environment I grew up in, I became a different person, and this was the first time I was realizing it. And that was the first time when I felt like I actively had to resist being put in the old role, right, that I was in from back home. And it was truly strange. And I feel like I did stand my ground in a sense and managed to, yeah, to still have the agency to be the person that I now want to be. And after that, I had the sense that, okay, this is something that I actually need to do. But yeah, it was very, very interesting to note this in real time because, people expect a certain reaction from you because that's like your personality. That's how they know you. And then you're in this position. It's like, I'm not going to react like that because that's not who I am now. So there's confusion and awkwardness happening.
Yeah, I really like that story, and I think it's kind of interesting. But if I look at my life, I don't think I have like these certain events like you had with your like being 4 months cut away from like your environment. I don't have these events for myself where I say, okay, this has changed me in a way that is like very much recognizable for others. So I just find it like interesting when people have these profound experiences that change them. Because for me, I mean I'm certainly not the person that I was 20 years ago, but I don't think there was like this event that changed it. I think it was more like a gradual change, and in some ways this could also mean like this idea of control is also being okay. I find it difficult to like completely redefine myself, and like being in control maybe also means like okay, I will expand my comfort zone at my own pace, and
Hmm.
just make small changes maybe in the direction of where I want to be, and instead of having these like revelations and then change.
So, what could be a small thing, or like, what are some tendencies, or maybe small things that you've noticed where you might have found part of your identity to actually be kind of decided on? It's because it's sometimes from a young age, right? It's just like, oh, Lucas, he's always been X, right? And then you're always like, I never wanted to be X, and I don't have to be X, and I'm not X now. So,
um what I would say is that I think in some ways I I still have like similar values and similar ideas that I used to have. For example, like the kind of work that I'm doing right now, I I think I always had this idea. I want to go in that direction professionally. Um, I think the thing that has changed most about myself is just I would say confidence in general. Like I'm much more confident with who I am, and also in the way that I react to other people.
Yeah, and I also totally can see your point about the famous people, which is something that I've been thinking a lot about now, having this podcast, and maybe for the first time, just these last few days, starting to go public with my ambitions for it, with my wishes for it, with the wishes that are to do with myself, and owning the fact that I would like to see it grow. And with it comes responsibility and also visibility in the public space, right? And to be
Yeah.
honest, it's like what you describe is terrifying to me, where people are then, without actually having the one-on-one interaction with you, are starting to yeah, basically just classify you as this and that. And I know there's a beautiful blog post from Tim Ferriss about all the downsides of being famous, and it's really really good. People should look it up in his blog. But basically, he says it's like, even if, because out of 10,000 people who now know your name, there are going to be on average, I don't know, at least a couple who are completely cuckoo, and they think they know you. You know, you're the object of their obsession in terms of their infatuation or whatever fantasies they have or something like that. And yeah, it's terrifying. And you can you do anything about it? That's the scary question. I'm not sure you could.
Yeah, I think a lot of people um, don't think about the downsides of fame, and they want to be recognized, they want to be known, but yeah, it comes with some downsides that people only see when it's probably too late. But I don't think this is only a problem like when you're famous or when you have like a big audience. Even people who are like the complete opposite of famous, they are only known like in a very small circle, or they only have a few close friends. I think even these people are like shaped a lot by their surroundings. I mean, as they say, you are the average of the five people you spend most time
Mm,
with. And but what I'm really thinking is that a lot of it comes from this need for belonging. And I I so often I hear people like saying like, oh, I'm looking for my people, I'm looking for my tribe. They're looking for people they can relate to. And it's like a very human need. Like I think we have these two needs. On the one hand, we want to be unique, we want to express ourselves, but then also we want to be part of something and belong something somewhere. And so it can be like this whole idea of like controlling your identity and just being completely independent. That can be difficult then you when you also embedded in a community and they have like certain expectations of who you are.
yeah,
And you
yeah.
might be afraid to I mean, you might be afraid of like um not like not being who they want you to be, because then they might leave you as well.
Yeah, that's I agree. I mean, I live in a community where we honestly don't feel like part of the norm here, and that can be difficult. And I've always felt like the type of person who doesn't belong anywhere. Like I'm a maverick doing my own thing. But for me, I think part of the healing has been understanding that um, I can share the wishes of other people of doing well in life, and I can be a lot more flexible today with actually appreciating and accepting the fact that they have views that are different from me, and still not be completely in fear over the fact that we don't agree on some things as of yet. And I think that that's been really helpful. Like understanding that people out there, they want to do well, and they have a different way of doing it, and kind of making your uh, boundaries or criteria a lot more flexible and not so rigid.
Yeah. I'm curious to know how it was for you, like making this realization that like you are maybe different from the people around you, and was that something you felt good about, or is this something that where at point you would have thought that okay, maybe it would be easier for me if I was like more like them?
Yeah, you know, one thing that it brings to mind is the this stupid adage which I hate, which is ignorance is bliss. Never felt it, never wanted to be more ignorant than I have to be. Um, don't believe in it, and that seems to be, but that's a very prevalent thing to say. So I never had this wish to be like everyone else explicitly, but then again, going to a faraway place where nobody knows me and stuff, you realize that it's not just the stuff that's explicit in your mind that counts, and that you have been shaped a certain way. So now, for example, I'm dealing with something in my life of just understanding that I grew up in an environment that does not value excellence or being like shining in some way, because I grew up on a kibbutz, which is this egalitarian communist society at its heart. It hasn't been for a long time, but the kind of culture lingers on. And understanding that I was never encouraged to do something exceptional, while always feeling in my heart that maybe I do want that. So now I have to go and tend to that, and look at that conflict, and rid myself of the tendency to violently put myself down, in a sense, right? So I explicitly, I never wanted to be like other people, but I think growing up and being around people when you're pre-verbal, you still inherit a lot of from the culture that you grow up in, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's probably what I think is one of the biggest ways to deceive yourself is to think that you are free of influence from your surrounding.
Mm.
I don't think anyone, even if I say that's maybe what I aspire to, it would be delusional to say, okay, I'm just my own independent person, and because obviously my environment has shaped me.
Right. Yeah. So I'm wondering how that relates to the second part that you mentioned of diversifying. If that is something that comes when this realization hits that you need to keep your sovereignty, when kind of finding an identity that you feel comfortable with, is diversifying something that's involved when the um, building on top of the old stuff comes into play.
Um, so when it comes to this diversification, I would say even if now I would say like both control and diversification is good. And as I said before, like control has always been something that has been quite important for me. Not to get like too much outside influence that interferes with me as an independent person. Regarding diversification, I think that's something I from for a long time I had too little of, because at some point I had like these few ideas of like that's who I am, that's what I should do, and like this idea, okay, I want to build a business, I want to make my own products, and like that's kind of the only thing that I value my life based on. And I say, okay, there's all these other areas, and I would either I might have neglected them, or I would have thought, okay, like what's the purpose of succeeding in any of them if I don't like follow my main goal. And so so for me, I think for quite some time, I was like completely focused on one thing, and then later only I became like more of the opposite. Like I'm more open to like doing more different things, and exploring like different options, that I mean, other than the one that I was focused on before. And I really believe in this idea of diversity, because I think it leads to some sort of resilience, because if there's just one thing that defines you, and then you you fail in that, you feel like you failed as a person. But when you have different things, you may have something else to rely on. So I was thinking of this metaphor as like different identities or different things that you do, things you like, things that define you. They are like different layers around you, and like when they, obviously the more you have, the more they add up, and that gives you resilience, because it's like a stronger armor against some attacks that threaten your identity. But then at the same time, because you're wearing more of them, you have to wear them lighter, and that means you're less likely to be um, to have one thing that you're too much obsessed with, to the exclusion of maybe other things that could also be relevant.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and yeah, I can come at it from different angles. But first of all, thinking that you know yourself absolutely is actually dangerous. It's actually dangerous if you're so invested in being the type of person who does this or is, and it's going to make you to put up a facade. Well, life throws curveballs at you and it can surprise you, and
Yeah,
sometimes it's going to throw the type of curveball that doesn't allow you to go with the facade that you're used to projecting on the outside, and that could lead to suicide in the most extreme cases. So
yeah,
I've known these people in my life, and that's always a tragedy. And these are the people that, in retrospect, you say, I just wish they wouldn't be so hard on themselves, right? Or that they would have something else that they could go to, so that they integrate it into a longer story with an arc that includes a rise and a fall and a rising up again, instead of being so invested in this story that's supposed to just linearly go up and never go down. um, and I think that is very important. Interestingly, I find that there's a book by Kurt Vonnegut called Bluebeard, and it's about a fictional character with some real life characters that are fictional, but they're in there. And I think he talks about the suicide of Mark Rothko, I believe, there in that book. And at least in the book, he makes Rothko realize that, first of all, he was very, very, very talented at one thing. And then he kind of moved on to doing this other thing, which was just this ridiculous play with like airbrush or something like that. And I think it was like he was excellent at sports at first or something. And it's actually, he went on to do something that he sucks at, so that he doesn't have to have the pressure of being really good at something, which is ostensibly good. But then in a twist of fate, he becomes really successful making these ridiculous artworks, right? That for some people for some reason people really like. And then he actually goes and kills himself because he's actually become very good at something which he tried to be kind of bad at, and didn't want the pressure. So I don't know. It's portrayed realistically enough so that it's something to ponder on. But yeah, I guess my point is that um, yeah, it could actually be dangerous to base your identity on just this one thing that you're supposed to be very good at.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this. What they sometimes call the Club 27. All these
Mm.
musicians that that died at age 27, probably mostly through suicide, because they were already quite successful, like in their maybe in their late teens, early 20s. So they were like this one thing, and like society was expecting them to be just one thing, and they didn't have this this opportunity to like explore if they just had to perform what again bring back to this idea of audience capture. They had to perform like society expected them to, and they just couldn't do it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So now you've just given me an idea. It's probably every person who's really good at something should also open a Twitter account or whatever, where they post the just terrible doodles that, or
Yeah,
whatever it is they really suck at. Showcase that to make one post. Just like make sure that it's alternating between what you're very good at and what you're very bad at.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, there's something healing about being able to expose things that you're not in the, not even in the top 10% of, and be like, hey, that's, I own that part. And of course, self humor can be a really good way of doing it, of keeping yourself grounded in that sense. Um, yeah. Has there been anything in your life that you've kind of um, mindfully added in order to diversify?
mm, that's a good question, because I'm not sure if there's like one specific thing that I could mention, but I would say like a lot of the as said, I'm like a lot of my life I was really focused on what I was probably most good at, which is like creating software, programming, and that's what I wanted to do, and I felt I have, because like quite at an early stage I was really focused on doing things, and then I was mostly thinking about things that I could create with these skills, and um I didn't like read enough, or I didn't expose myself to new ideas, and I think that's something that I have started a few years ago when I start to get involved in the effective altruist community, just to have like some ideas that are like different from my work, and like engaging with them on a regular basis. And then again during the pandemic with online communities like the Intellect, where I try to actively like engage with some new things, and meet some people that were maybe in like a different line of work. Um, but all these were what I would say like intellectual exercise, in a way that it was just like different ideas, different information. And now I'm thinking about like what could be something that I should try, or that I should do in my life, that is like completely non-intellectual in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I have a suggestion, and I'm just lucky to have my wife who is coming more from the world of physical exercises and that world, and seeing her evolution in that field from like Pilates instructor and gym instructor more into the world of natural movement, natural parkour, and things like that. And I owe her a lot for introducing me to this kind of stuff, because I'm definitely a person who can be in his head too much. So going outside and working on, skills that are transferable eventually, because if you work on your range of motion with your body, and I'm a work in progress. It's like I wish I would be much more active in that space. But keeping your range of motion, flexibility, bravery when you have to leap between two things outside, and you could fall, it could hurt. Um, yeah, that's just one suggestion.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like doing something more physical. That's certainly something I'm thinking about. And I would like to get back to one thing which I also
Hmm.
just remembered when you were saying, like, even doing something different that could give you something that could also be applicable to other areas of your life. And what I think is like another advantage of diversification of your interests and like the things that you do is that the more ideas you expose yourself to, the more you can also bring them together. Like this whole idea of combinational creativity, or what some people like to call idea sex. That is like
Hmm.
taking very different ideas and bringing them together. And I've seen a lot of people who are like maybe like changing their fields, like their professional fields, and then they find like things from their previous career that they can apply in their new career. And the same goes like with any interests or hobbies that you have, where you might learn something about yourself that that you can then apply in other areas.
Yeah, my wife has this amazing uncle who he studied medicine, so for 7 years or whatever that was. Immediately upon graduation, went to work for Intel for like 25, 30 years, right? So never did anything with his medicine um, degree, and then after that quit, started his startup, and his startup is now in the medical sector, uh, training doctors to receive a case, and it's a made up case even, but that's how they learn for their yearly exams in the US or something, some regulation. But so like you say, it always comes in handy, and it's something that I find talking with people, just approaching people, because for every podcast that I make at least two or three curiosity calls with people outside of this space, of the recorded space, and I always find that there's something to take away. So from coding, for example, I'm going to mess up the terms, but there's source code, right? And that's the long form thing of a function, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
go on.
and
I'll
and wh-
make the full analogy, then I'll tell you how good it is.
okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I thought that was yeah. So there's source code, like the long form, drawn out way of making a function, and then there's the short form, which I'm not sure what the name of that is. What is it?
That would be like the compiled code or the machine code.
The compile. Okay, so perfect. And for me as a dialectician, like thinking about concepts, this maps on perfectly, because to work on a concept and kind of think about what love is or what justice is, you need to look at many different angles, and you have a lot of information that kind of feed your understanding about the thing. But at some point, an understanding that's not moving, a real grasp of a concept, it kind of emerges from all the things that you know and is there, and it's beautiful, it's elegant, and it's completely packed, right? And you have the
Mm.
benefit that you can unpack it and you understand how you reach that thing. So maybe you want to unpack it periodically and look at it, make sure that it's working and all that. um, but it's just beautiful how our human mind can make these analogies or metaphors and carry things from one field to the next. And um, yeah, you could. There's almost no thing that's completely pointless to learn, except maybe just trivia facts. I guess that sometimes that's not applicable.
I mean, the you could learn trivia facts, and then you can tell them to other people, and then if that means you make a good impression on other people and they like you for
True.
it, then
That's
it
true.
had its benefit.
Yeah.
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 One thing that I think is also related to this is then like bring ideas together. um, I also feel like there's a lot of areas where people take like small things that aren't like really like very important in the greater scheme of things, like what kind of note-taking tool you use. Are you a Notion user? Are you an Obsidian user? Are you an Evernote user? And then they engage like in flame wars, like what tool is better.
Uh-huh.
And um, I don't really find these like also so interesting. So I find this question like, is A better or is B better? I don't find like really interesting, because I think the really interesting question is, how can maybe A and B be combined, or how can I take the best thing from A and B and create a better thing C? And I think that's like the more interesting question, is really looking at the world or at the different things as not something where you have to pick something and then defend your choice, but more as something of I can use all these as resources, as inspiration, and um, maybe I like this one better or this one better, but I don't need to make it all about this decision of like what is better, but more about like bringing things together.
Right. I remember this major watershed moment in my life, actually, where I realized, I'm going to look at what it means to. I think I used with myself the concept of happiness back at the time, which I wouldn't do now. I would say doing well or living well. But back then, I realized that I was now experimenting with and thinking about what it would mean to be happy for me. And then I realized, I need to experiment with that and be open to the possibility that I'm going to find that my thoughts about what makes me happy have not been correct, right? So then it's kind of like it's like the John Lennon quote, right? It's like they asked me in school what I wanted to do when I grow up. I told them I wanted to be happy, and or what is it? Yeah, right. And they said, no, no,
Yeah,
we I bungled it, but and then they said it's like no, we meant in terms of like what you're going to do, and they're like, you didn't understand the question, right? What it was something like that.
yeah. I've
uh,
I've heard this before. I really
yeah,
like it.
and I think that's important because if you go up one level and you're looking at a certain way you want to be, you have to entertain the possibility that it would entail doing something very different from what you've been doing if in fact you haven't been able to feel the feelings that you wanted or be in perfect harmony with yourself or something like that. And that also means that and I've heard that with people and with my wife as well, people who are sometimes very much invested in a career that they've built, and later on in life they find that they did that for the wrong reasons. Like maybe they chose that path only because one parent was so impressed with them, right? But actually it's not what brings them intrinsic joy. And later on they're like, okay, I guess I have 20 years of experience doing this one thing, but like it or not, I have to step away and doing this other thing because it makes me happier, even though I might be a complete beginner, even though I might have to get an entry level job now. But what can you do, right?
Yeah, and I think this goes back to this idea of like control, and in some ways it's like I would say it's a double-edged sword, because obviously there's, again, this is like a good example of where you basically did something because someone else thought that's who you should be, and it wasn't really what you wanted. But then at the same time, like the downside of like really trying to control yourself is also that you might close yourself off to the things that come from the outside that could show you a better way. And if you just say, "Oh, no, 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 I'm who I am, and I don't want to change," even if it doesn't make you happy. So yeah, that kind of makes it difficult. So you need to um, like really find the fine line between not blindly following what other people say, but also not ignoring them, and sometimes they may be able to show you a way that could make you more happy in the end.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking about something, and I wonder what your thoughts are going to be about, because now I realize there are people in the public sphere that make a move, like a career change, presumably because the thing that they're famous for is actually not in the larger scope, very respectable. So I'm thinking models and maybe sports players, people who tend to over time try to move into different roles in media. So the model who's actually now trying to be also a singer or a TV presenter or something like that, where the move seems to be coming from a place of I'm actually, yeah, I guess it's both an act of control and diversification. But it's interesting because I feel like there is a subliminal assumption that they're going to do well in that field. They actually really want to do well in that field, and they're moving into a new field. And I feel like there is still a lot of stress about it. So I was just trying to think of an example where, yes, there's control, yes, there's diversification, but it could be quite hard to bear mentally if things don't work out at your new kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big risk when you're successful in one thing, and I mean, you gave that example before of that person who tried to do something completely different, which they thought they were bad at. But I would say, like most people, when they try and enter a different field, they try to be good there as well. And if they are already used to success, they certainly want to replicate success. And I think, I mean, obviously, most of the examples that come to mind are people who are famous in fields where that fame is like very you could say it's not really permanent, because like especially when you are like when you're a sports player, you can only play professional sports up to a certain age. um, so you need to plan what you can do afterwards. And but ideally you can start with it as a point where everyone still knows you as the famous sports person. Like when you like if everybody knows you as this sports player, and then you start your business, you can take your fame with you. You will already have potential buyers for whatever you're trying to sell them. And like if what you sell them is like really good, you can take that way beyond your current sports career.
Yeah, yeah, I think I and again I think that is going to be um, yeah, it's something that you have to kind of tread carefully around, this transference of skills, but also transference of expectations and the feeling that you know people, because they might not be, even though they're good at one thing doesn't mean that they're good people, and so on. And that seems to be such a hard thing to get into people's heads. It's like, don't expect the sports player who grew up in a really bad neighborhood to then become a beacon of light in a world in terms of personalities. Like, they're still carrying their childhood traumas with them. Their friends are still their old friends from the neighborhood in many cases, and yeah, that's also something that's important. So if we even moved from the first person perspective of trying to control your identity, diversify your identities, like also us as knowing other people, we need to keep in mind that we only know a very tiny sliver, or like one very small aspect of their personality. We don't go with them home after the game or after the show or after that, and for some reason that seems to be a challenge too.
Yeah, definitely. I think when we look at other people, it's we probably don't know as much about them as we think they do.
Yeah, So I'd say even, there's a point to be made about kind of keeping an open mind and remember that other people are more diverse than we realize. It's not just diversifying ourselves for our own sake, but also keeping an open mind and realize that people are diverse in ways that we don't know about them. Because this could save us from so many things. We are prone to trust people based on their skill in just this one domain, and then be shocked when they don't act as role models. um, yeah, so societally I think that's an important point to make.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to keep this in mind, because it also means like how we treat other people we meet. And when you when you want to connect with people, I think it's really important to understand that yes, you may have like some idea of who they are, but that is just like one aspect of them, and they are like a fully rounded human being, ideally, that you're talking to. And yeah, it's really helpful to understand that everyone is maybe going through similar things, and you probably have things you can connect like on like totally different levels that you don't even know about that person. But yeah, it's I think it's really important to treat other people as like these full human beings, and not just something where you project your idea of what that you think that person is, onto them.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about like I don't know if we touched on it, but what would be the dark side of diversifying? If we had a dark side of controlling your identity, where it could get into the point where it's dangerous for you because, you're clinging on to appearances so badly that, you might want to literally not exist in any other way. What would be yeah, failed attempt at diversification that could do more harm than good?
um Well, I would say there's this trade-off, where you have to think of like how many things can you really focus on at the same time. And I've thought a lot about this idea, and I like to talk about like serial focus and parallel focus. And it's this idea of I mean, there are different ways to diversify yourself, and one way, and which I'm seeing quite often in other people, is where you try to really double down on one thing, and you do it for some time, and then like from the outside it feels like a sudden switch, but it was probably prepared on the inside. And then you start something new, and then you end up being like all about this new thing. And I think this is certainly one way to go about it. I would say like if you do that too frequently, I don't think it's particularly healthy. And then the other approach would be what I'm more inclined to do, is this parallel focus, like having all these ideas on your mind and having all these things that you think you need to pursue all at the same time. And I think you easily get overwhelmed or burned out at this, and you are it's generally just like a more complex way to live, because you're kind of like overthinking and questioning all of your choices, because you have like this huge pool of things that you can draw from, and thinking of ways that you could do or what you maybe shouldn't do. And it's certainly a much harder way to live, I would say, than if you just say, okay, um, well, I'm a software developer at work, and I care what my I care what my employer does, and then I go home and I'm a family man, or whatever. And you just have like this, I would say, much simpler life, where you just say, okay, this is just a few aspects of me. That's who I am. Um, or like the other version, where you say, okay, I want to be X, and then you look, okay, what which again brings to the control aspect. you start thinking, okay, what are other people who are X, what do they do, and then you just try and become like them, because you have like a role model that you can imitate. And if you feel like, oh no, I want to make my own identity, it's really easy to like, especially when you have a lot of interests, to put too many things on your plate and then just get completely overwhelmed, and you are not like very secure in your identity, because it's always changing and fluctuating with all the different aspects, all the different things pulling on you.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely see that. It makes me remember that, it's honestly, it makes me laugh when I do come across these podcasts or bio pages or whatever, where the person is like, has eight or nine. It's like singer, songwriter, actor, philanthropist, businessman, designer, and all these things. At some point, it's like, dude, you really have to go with like a top three. I'm glad for you that you've once designed something or did all these things, but at some point, it's almost kind of too incredible, right? And incredible in the sense that, yeah, it's hard to give credit for each and everything, because we know that the 1% of designers are not, yeah, to be like the in the 1% or even 10% of anything, just like that excludes you from being in the, except for very exceptional cases, it's going to mean that you're probably not going to identify some other things. And there's something almost comedic about seeing people with these like 9 or 10 different things that they identify in.
Yeah, true. And but I think at this, when you see these people, then it's also a lot about like bragging about how many things you do. And like internally, I think it's very much about how comfortable are you with sharing parts of your identity that aren't like a big part of it. For example, when you call yourself like a podcast host, but then the last episode you recorded was like a year ago, would you still be comfortable with calling yourself a podcast host, or would you call yourself like a former
Right.
podcaster or ever? So and like that's the whole thing. Like when you have all these different identities, the question is like, which ones are you comfortable sharing, because you're they are an active part that you can like honestly say, okay, this is something I do, and not, okay, this is something I have done at one point in my life, but I'm still saying it because people may think better of me that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a rap song on as the pinned tweet on my podcast page, my podcast Twitter account, but I'm not gonna call myself a rapper anytime soon.
Yeah.
So yeah, is there anything else, any aspect that we haven't covered of controlling and diversifying your identity, or something else you'd like to share?
um Yeah, there's one thing that I would like to go back to, and that is this
Hmm.
kind of trade-off which I mentioned earlier in this episode, about the human need for belonging, and this like whole finding your tribe idea, and the need for agency. And what I'm feeling is like this strength of desire for this need for belonging. I think it's like really different in people, but I also think it's a function of privilege, in terms of like what kind of supportive environment you grew up. Like if you're like if your family supported you, if they let you do certain things you wanted. Is it's a lot about like financial security, like can you even afford to disagree with your boss in thing. And I think if you don't have this kind of supportive environment, I think that it could be really helpful to try and I'm not I can't say how easy this is, because maybe I was lucky to have of it, but I'm thinking it could be really helpful to surround yourself with people who aren't so much into this tribalism of okay, this is who we are and you should be like us and you should be different. and you should be um, you should try and find people who really value this whole idea of diversity and everybody bringing like different things to the table. And I mentioned before that I was active in the effective altruist community, and I would like to mention this again because I remember in our first call where we kind of like planned to make this podcast episode, we also talked about the EA community, and
Hmm.
it has also like shaped my thinking on this area, because I think um, the EA community is a good example of people who are quite open minded, because they believe in rationality and science, and like changing your opinion and valuing like different perspectives. But at the same time, I would say even like the EA community isn't like perfect in a sense, and I think even this community is also like prone to certain kind of like group thing, that especially with like more difficult topics where it's like very hard to make your opinion on. I think a lot of people in EA, they kind of just take the perspective of some influential people, and that's certainly something you see in every community, and that's also why again I wouldn't probably want the EA community to be like my main identity. It's just like one aspect of what I do and what I'm interested in. And yeah, I think this is something I wanted to add.
Yeah, well, I myself at some point joined or pledged the community, but I've never been active. I haven't really discussed EA with any other people, really, and I don't have strong opinions. But I know I did notice that they were getting some flack from a lot of people online, and I think it, like, one theory I have is that it has to do with the fact that they are basically proselytizing. Like, they are pro going out there and spreading the word and talking about the donations, because supposedly it's going to inspire other people and so on. Um, and this is a kind of a top-down thing that started with the founders of the movement. And I think that any movement that makes it a point to talk about what they do and, in a sense, convince people in how their way is a good way to go, it's going to meet backlash, because they're going to be talking to people who don't think, who are going to find flaws, and so on, and there's going to be conflict there. So I just think that this could possibly be an ostensibly small thing that's part of the EA community, but a norm or an ethos that turned out to be quite harmful, if only because it now gives people a reason to kind of oppose this a bit of like aggressive marketing. It's not aggressive, but yeah, just talking about this stuff. A lot of people are not responding well to other people kind of talking about all the good that they're doing, right? And then of course it also gives place for people who are prone to join EA to feel like they're doing something and have their identity there and feeling superior if that's their thing. So I think that was probably something that was built in there that might have been a mistake. No.
I'm not so sure about this. I think it's the problem that you mentioned, that people who are trying to do good, I think they, whether through EA or through anything, I think they will always get some backlash, because a lot of people, they either feel threatened because they see other people doing more good than they do, or people like second guess them, and they have this idea that there isn't like real altruism, and they probably have like ulterior motives on why they're doing this, and why are they spreading these ideas. Um, what I think that the bigger problem with the backlash, or what causes the backlash towards the EA ideas, is that because EA has this foundation in rationality and science, um, these people think you easily think that, okay, just because this is scientifically proven, okay, this is the truth, and then you don't go out and say, okay, hey, I'm donating to this thing. um, if they do it as an EA, they send this, okay, I'm donating to this thing, and this is probably the best way to do good, and which kind of comes with a badge. Okay, you should be donating to the same thing, and if you're doing
Hmm.
anything else, even if you think it's good, it's probably not as effective. And I would say this is in my opinion one of the primary reasons why EA is getting such a backlash.
Yeah, yeah, these are fair points. I think they also hold a lot of weight. Yeah, I personally could never find a real fault with AI, because even if what your complaint or argument is going to be that, hey, these guys are not as scientifically rigorous as they should be, well, whatever, look at the intention there, and the intention matters. And I don't think that anybody from EA is mad at people who are donating their money to like less effective causes or something like that. It's yeah, one of those things where I definitely think you're right that a lot of people are it is threatening. Just at its core, it's a threatening thing to not be part of a movement that says that it's doing good, right or wrong. And I'm sure some criticisms are fair. Um, yeah, yeah. Anyway, but I don't really hold any strong opinions in on that matter. Yeah, well, Lucas, I really, really enjoyed this, and this has been mind opening and very timely for me as I go through some um, personal, yeah, junctions in my life that require me to look at my identity and what's comfortable, what's uncomfortable, what's safe, what's unsafe, what's going to cause growth, and what's going to cause some pigeonholing. So
Yeah,
thanks so much for bringing this up. Um, yeah,
yeah.
anything
Thanks,
else you'd
thanks for
like to
having
add?
me on this podcast. And if I could give you if I have given you like any ideas that were helpful, I'm really glad. And maybe we can like have this conversation again in a few months and see what came out of it for you.
Of course. Yeah, thank you. It really has it really has made me think of interesting things that are applicable. Yeah, would you like to share with listeners any type of information about where you could be found online?
Um, yeah, sure. So I think the best way to connect is on Twitter. My username on Twitter is just my real name, Lukas Rosenstock. And yeah, so I would say my Twitter feed is also like pretty diverse in terms of the things that I post on. So I haven't let my Twitter account be defined just by one thing. And so, just as a heads up, what you can expect when you follow me. And but I would love to connect on Twitter.
Amazing, fantastic, and yeah, I'll also have to get into the habit of asking people to, if you enjoyed this, now there's a Patreon page that is patreon.com/eyalshai, my name. So if anybody took anything good out of this and would like to help the mission, you're welcome to go on there and support the podcast. And apart from that, just the usual boring stuff of like, share, subscribe. Yeah, Lucas, thank you so much, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah, thanks again, and hope to talk again soon.